has during the alley takeover. So he holds a torch towards a bunch of servers in Arcadia, and then the whole fucking place just blows up. I couldn't really suspend my disbelief on that one. In general, the alien character I don't think was needed. He sort of just existed and was a love interest to Octavia for a short bit of time, and there's really nothing interesting that I can say about the character. Other than those two nitpicks, again, this season is just fire from front to back. The final episodes of Season 4 have to be some of the best episodes of the 100, hands down. Where in the previous episodes, Jaha finally succeeds in finding a bunker to save the human race, and it was hidden right underneath Polis the entire time. This batch of final episodes kicks off with Season 4, Episode 10, Die All, Die Merrily, which is easily in the top 5 episodes of the entire show. This is where we finally see a real conflict take place, where all of the Grounder clans, including the Sky People, select a champion to fight on behalf of their clan. Whichever champion wins allows their clan the right to take shelter within the Second Dawn bunker. This was the only way the Grounders would have agreed to decide who gets bunker access, through a tradition like conflict that is deeply within culture. The episode is jam-packed with some of the best action in the entire show, and it's a tense ride through and through. Octavia was the champion selected for the Sky People. It's unfortunate that by this point in the show, Octavia was the character who would kill most likely in this conclave, but I'm glad that they took this where from the characters acknowledge that while she's a good fighter, she certainly is not the best amongst Grounders who have been training their entire lives. In Season 2, they sort of rushed the process on making her a badass very quickly, but here the writing takes a more grounded approach by recognizing that some of these warriors are probably better than Octavia, especially Luna and the Float Group, so Octavia needs to approach this with caution. We also lose Rogue this episode. I mentioned how much I like the Rogue character in Season 3, and Zach McGowan was made a series regular for the season, which of course I'm going to say was a great choice, because Rogue is just so cool. But as much as I was enjoying his presence, it was refreshing to see a main character get the love screen. No emotional goodbyes, nothing ceremonious, just ground in a fountain of radioactive black light. It was quick, relentless, pretty quick death by main characters. And the conclusion of the episode is pretty cool as well. Having Octavia sneak attack with Luna to win the game was a cool callback to Octavia being the Rogue hit her good night. Following that, episode 11, Season 4, from the other side, was a solid part, showing how much characters were willing to turn on them if they just well. Clark, Jaha, and the only of the Sky People that snuck into the bunker whilst the conclave was taking place. Characters like Octavia, Kane, Monty, and the others were left on the other side. Clark managed to sneak Bellamy in, who was fuming that everyone else left Octavia outside. Bellamy is pushed to his most desperate point yet. It was great to see how low our characters are sunk by Clark to turn on our own people like this. And of course, before Bellamy opens the bunker door, it's held up by Clark. All triple up, and it's easy for Clark to have it in there to shoot him. Yeah. Then, of course, Monty has his final goodbye with Jasper, which is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the show. Monty tried his best, but Jasper had shown no signs of wanting to change or finding a reason to keep living. At the very least, Jasper Jordan had the chance to go out on his own terms, something rarely seen in the world of 100. Monty-Jasper friendship was some of the best parts of Seasons 1 and 2, so to see it all crumble away was so tragic. I think it was also very shocking to see the show kill off a second series regular in a row, given that they had just done this in the previous episode with Rowan. Not only was the show hitting those emotional beats, but it was also really starting to have that edge of unpredictability again. Side note, this episode was directed by Henry Ian Cusick, who plays Kane. I believe this is his first episode where one of the cast got to direct an episode, and I thought he wanted to. The following episode, called The Chosen, was probably one of the most emotional episodes of the show. Now that the Grounder clan can gain access to the Second Dawn bunker, the Sky People who had stolen the bunker from their 700 now must whittle that number down to 100 survivors, which, yes, ironically enough, the exact same dilemma they had when they were trying to find safe haven in Arcadia. Now, yes, obviously they had just killed off 2 series regulars in the previous 2 episodes. There was no way in hell anyone that significant was going to die in this episode. But there was something so difficult about watching this scenario play out. There have been a lot of instances on this show where a few hundred characters just up and die from something similar. And while most of the Sky People whose lives are at risk this episode are red shirts or minor characters, we still had to watch our main characters look these hundreds of people in their eyes and tell them who is going to live and die. People who they've known their entire lives. Then you have one of the original delinquents, Nathan Miller, had his father get his own name in the bunker lottery to give his son a better chance of making into the bunker. It's all just so gut-wrenching to watch. Jaha, of course, is furious that the Sky People have sacrificed so many lives. I don't blame him. He's the one who found the bunker. So he tries to make a final Hail Mary to save his people by having the Sky People leave Orbit. Kate talks Jaha out of this, knowing that this attempt will end with all of them dead. But now it's quiet as only cycle. They're left with no choice. Kate and Jaha decide to put the hundreds of Skype sleep with gas, and then choose who to save based on Clark's original list. This is on top of the fact that some people who were already chosen for safety are now being disregarded to the front and far away. The slow motion sequence where Kate is forced to say who is being left outside for death, whilst Jaha picks up a child who will now be separated from his father. Jaha knows the inverse of this scenario, of course, having lost his son himself. It's just incredible what they did with this episode. This one might as well be the top. The final episode is entirely focused on the remaining characters outside of it. It is Clark, Bellamy, Raven, Monty, Murphy, Harper, Maury, and Echo. All of them trying to beat the Death Wave once and for all, and reach the arc via a rocket that Raven is fixing. It's an awesome race against the clock type of episode, watching the characters go through thick and thin to get this rocket up and running. By the end of the episode, Clark is forced to stay behind in order to ensure everyone is able to escape on the rocket. It's a great moment for her, as it almost accidentally told her that she had been acting the entire season. Now Clark herself shows that she is naturally suited for that leadership role, as she herself is willing to herself sacrifice. Our Team Rocket and to arrive on the Ark safe and sound, thanks to Clark's efforts. The season ends with a surprise, a 6-year time jump. You don't get to check in on Clark in this time, who went to the Flag Force. Not really what that looks like is destroyed by any sort of death. Clark now mysteriously has a child with her, and is still trying to reach Bellamy via radio. She has heard nothing from all of these years. A mysterious ship comes down from space, but it's a new faction entirely. There's a ton of things thrown at the audience in quick succession, but I enjoy the cliffhanger because it left the audience with a lot of things to ask questions about. And most importantly, it left us wanting more. So yeah, you can't tell, our review of this season has been far more fun than the season. The show elevated itself to heights I did not know it could, and it was such a fun, emotional one. I had a few little nitpicks here and there, but they didn't detract from my enjoyment. I do think the Prime Fire plotline should have waited another season or so. I would have loved to go to more locations and see how other clans operated, their histories and cultures, and it feels like we were kind of robbed of that because the whole world ended 4 seasons into the show. But in the end, that show delivered, and I was so excited to see where it went next. Now we can look towards Season 5, which is not even close to my favorites. Season 5 is a 6-year time jump that we just saw in the Season 4 finale. Much of the world is decimated by Prime Fire. Now all of the characters are in places with completely new allegiances. Clark encountered a child named Maddie, who also possesses Nightblood. Bellamy and the other sweethearts are basically like a family now. And then you have Octavia, who has earned the title of God Raven, burning everyone down in the Second Dawn bunker until one group, with their faction having become a deadly corpse. The opposition of Season 5 are the Allegiant prisoners, the ones who were aboard the UFO we saw during the Season 4 cliffhanger. They're a group of 3 more convicts who were sent into space as punishment to mine asteroids. After living in cryostasis for hundreds of years, they've only now returned to a post-apocalyptic state. The central conflict for Season 5 is that the only inhabitable space left on Earth is this forest known as the Shallow Valley, which Prime Fire missed during his nuclear death wave. The battle this season is between the Allegiance prisoners and Octavia's bunker. The war between the two to see who will control the one asteroid land left on Earth, which is the Shallow Valley. Season 5 is the difficult one. While rewatching the show, I realized this season was the one that I remembered the least. I knew it was one of my favorite seasons, but it's been blocked in my memory for so long that I couldn't remember why I felt that way. Maybe the fact that I'd forgotten so much was my tell-all that it was a boring season, but that wasn't enough. I was eager to watch the season to see what exactly had upset me so much. I was starting to doubt myself at the beginning, because the season does start out strong. We get to see Clark wander the world by himself, because there's all these previous locations from the show, relics, places like Arcadia and Homeless, which I thought were good stable locations in the show, gone, just like that. What was going on in this premiere was the lowest moment for the Clark character up to this point. Whether it be her finding Jasper's letter and his iconic goggles in the ruins of Arcadia, or her failed attempt at reaching the Second Dawn bunker, only for it to be covered in complete rubble. I probably could have done without the desert scene where Clark is screaming out loud to herself, "I lost everything! I lost my friend! As she then coincidentally is hundreds of meters from the safety of the Shallow Valley. Sometimes the show needed to be a bit more subtle in its dialogue. But honestly, I could watch the entire episode of Clark just exploring this little wasteland. It was a very great one. Within the Shallow Valley is where we're introduced to Maddie, who basically becomes Clark's daughter. When I first met the character, I was just indifferent. I didn't like or dislike Maddie, but I was open to seeing what purpose her character was. Although, Make no mistake, Maddie's presence in this series will lead to the biggest issues the show would have seen in this season and future seasons. We'll get to that specific topic later in this section of the video. I'll say it right now. Apparently this is mandatory in every character case. Nothing I am saying about Maddie's character is any fault of the actress. She did a good job as the character, mainly her overimportance within the narrative that begins to create problems for the show. Halfway through the premiere episode, we also get to see the survivors in Mark's perspective. According to the wiki, we'll call them Space. Bellamy has entered a relationship with Echo, Monty's still with Harper, and Murphy broke up with Amori and has carved out his own spot on the Ark. Space Crew also noticed the flying towards the screen patch on the Earth, and that prompts our Space Crew to off serious ship to potentially revisit Earth and see what's going on. The following episode, Red Queen, we get the backstory of what their initial days in the second bunker, at least we get a piece of the equation for now, with more flashbacks being shown later in the season. The bunker survivors were not able to exit the bunker, but they discovered in the previous episode that the rebel of Polis was trapping everyone in the team. One group is now forced to take drastic measures by cutting rations in half, leading to many revolts. A section of Sky people left the revolt, going in line with the penultimate episode of Season 4, where many Sky people believe that the bunker was theirs by right and did not belong to the Grandmothers. In this episode, we finally lose our second job on the Locust. I wasn't too shocked by the death, as it was announced behind the scenes that Isaiah Washington would no longer be a series regular on the show. By the end, Kate and Abby have a very tender dialogue with each other. Hearing him say that he wants to be his wife and son, but a touching dialogue with the character. Now, also at the point of Octavia, he instills in Octavia that she must take control of this rebellion and prove to everyone why she is the leader of Lockerbie. Octavia confronts the Grounders, wanting to stop the Sky People's rebellion. She tells them that they will be stopped, but they will not witness the slaughter and destruction. It's her way of establishing that she is the law. When the Grounders don't like what she has to say, she slices down a dozen of Grounders, one by one. Every time the group phrase,
or you're the enemy of one.
It's badass and one of the coolest moments of the whole show. Octavia, who was previously known as Sky Ripa, has now taken on the title of Blood Rain. Octavia then enacts her rule of law, meaning that if you commit crimes against one crew, you must fight to the death within this battle and be free. This crew was out. Give a head to the episode. Clark is kidnapped by the elitist prisoners on Earth, while Space Crew takes control of that elitist ship and still holds many elitist prisoners in cryos. Bellamy uses these hostages on elitists to leverage Clark's safety, as well as to remove the rebel on top of the second bomb. The elitist faction complies and reunites all the characters with one another. It's only after everyone escapes the bunker that the real plot of the season begins. The remaining prisoners are freed from cryosleep on the elitist spacecraft, so Bellamy loses all leverage. Anyways, the prisoners leave Polis to take over the shallow valley, while one crew is stuck in Polis. And it was here where I remembered what I ended up disliking so much about the season. I just find the idea of fighting for a shallow valley to be so boring. It's disappointing that the plot of the season is about everyone fighting for a patch of grass. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like, yeah, I'm not a fucking idiot. It's like the only livable place you'll find on Earth. It just feels like such a boring plot to be building towards. Like, there's 9 episodes to go for Season 5, and this is the plot that we're going to focus on. I haven't really talked about the villains this season. I guess I didn't really care for them at the time. You have Dioza, who I thought was a cool character. I always found her terrorist label to be kind of a bit disproportionate to what we actually end up seeing from the character. She definitely proves that she's not to be fucked around with, but I never saw her as the level of Hitler or Bin Laden as she would later be compared to in the show. But I must say, I really came to like the character come Season 6 and 7. And you have McCreary, who is just forgettable. I didn't care for him back on my first viewing. I certainly don't care for him now. Then there's Miles Shaw. He is the guy you can easily predict will be a turncoat good guy. He's cool for his pre-war knowledge, but that's kind of as far as my care for the character goes. I think what later on doesn't work is having McCreary be the main bad by the end of the season, when he was the least interesting of the prisoners' crew. They should have just stuck with Dioza until the very end, in my opinion. Space Crew was separated after rescuing the one crew members, so eventually Echo reunites with Bellamy, and oh boy. Now we have Octavia, who is understandably upset at seeing Echo in a relationship with Bellamy. You know, Echo being the one who betrayed Bellamy and got over 30 Sky people blown up, and then almost succeeded in killing Octavia. Look, I can understand Bellamy falling for her over the course of 6 years. I mean, there's not that many people on the Ark when they were trapped up there. But we barely saw any of it. Space Crew didn't get any flashbacks, and they're all just sort of a family now. But it's not like flashbacks are the same relationship. The idea that we're supposed to think Octavia is being unreasonable and acting like evil blood Reina towards Echo, when Echo has repeatedly done all of these characters dirty before, would be kind of absurd not to side with Octavia here. Even Octavia has to tell Bellamy that Echo is responsible for his girlfriend's death. You guys remember Gina? You remember that one? This Octavia Echo issue is a symptom of a bigger issue this season. Jumping ahead at the end of season 5, and don't worry, we're not at the end yet. There's still a lot to talk about here. They claim that this season is the end of book 1. Whatever the fuck that means. And everything in season 6 onward is book 2. Let's say we actually take this book thing seriously. I think book 1 should have capped off at the end of season 4, with season 5 being the intro to book 2. Why? Because season 5 completely reshifts character relationships and dynamics through a time jump where we only see very little of their lives in that time frame. And this shift in relationships is for the worst of things, I must say. As we just saw with the Bellamy Echo Octavia situation. Space Crew people are very close together. But do you honestly expect me to believe that Bellamy is closer to something like a Lori as opposed to Clark? This time jump did not do the show or its characters many favors, because we didn't see them develop into who they are now. And you have Clark, for example. The thing that matters most to Clark now is Maddie. Maddie. A girl that just appeared this season. A time jump happened, and now she's the most important thing to Clark. Anyways, once all the bunker survivors come to learn about Maddie and her lifeblood, it doesn't take long to finally realize the purpose of her character, which is to be a plot device. Maddie's entire existence is chopped up into driving tension because she's a Nightblood, meaning Maddie could ascend to be the next commander. This is what Clark is fighting for. She spends the remainder of the series fighting on behalf of a plot device. Fucking whoopee. Look, so far I've been pretty doom and gloom about season 5, so I'd like to acknowledge some highlights. Monty's arc this season is just wonderful. Obviously this season is his swan song, and his final scene at the end of season 5 is one of the best moments of the entire show, but everything leading up to it is great as well. Monty unfortunately ends up reading Jasper's suicide note, and watching him desperately try to avoid war and conflict is just so heartbreaking. Monty can't help but think of the system, how they always end up in this vicious war cycle. And eventually, Monty's farm being burned down by Octavia was just horrible to watch. Another pretty cool moment was seeing Bellamy be willing to tranquilize his sister. It was a very big moment for the character, and then him echoing the classic line, "My sister, my responsibility," was just great. And, we're back to ranting. I remember another thing I hated. We literally just go between seeing either Polis Ruins or Shallow Valley. Those are the two environments we get to stare at all season. And it's rough. Every episode or two, I guess a new character gets to shuffle into the Shallow Valley to add some kind of variation to the plot. But again, me, the guy who gushes about wanting to see more grounder environments, it just gets so fucking tiresome bouncing between these two locations. And we know that there isn't any room for variation, because the writers nuked the fucking world last season. There's nothing left. So it's either nuclear desert or green patch. Those are the two options we have for shooting scenery on this show. Thankfully, come the 11th episode, we have another highlight where we get to see more flashbacks to One Crew. Many fans had already speculated beforehand about how One Crew had survived beyond the 5-year wait time, and as many guessed correctly, it was real through Mark's force and cannibalism. Many in the bunker tried to protest this, with Kane being openly insubordinate during the One Crew dinner, but it was Abby of all people who convinced Octavia to make it a crime not to partake in the cannibal feast. Those who did not eat would be killed by Octavia herself. Revisiting this season, I can happily say this time around, it was way better knowing why Octavia was acting so sinister all of season 5. I was so happy she didn't become Blood Reina as a result of some power trip she got from being the leader. Clark and Kane both also made moves to betray Octavia. Kane wants no part in having Blood Reina enter the Shallow Valley, and Clark will take any deal that protects Maddie. Everyone ends up hating Clark for this choice, and Kane gets fucked up royally by one of the prisoners named Vincent, basically putting his character out of commission for the remainder of the series. A final battle for the Valley takes place, which has pretty cool action, I'll admit. Maddie has assumed control over One Crew after being passed the torch by Octavia. Well, after everything this season had been leading up to the question for who gets the Shallow Valley, well, none of it even matters, because McCreary announces, "Oh yeah, I had this bomb in space the entire time, and I'm just going to drop it on the Shallow Valley out of pettiness." So he does that, and everyone is forced to evacuate. They kill McCreary, and everyone vacates Earth once and for all. Prisoners and One Crew survivors both board the ship to escape this fate. This is the other point of contention I have with this season. None of this even mattered. It was pointless. McCreary just pulling a bomb out of his ass to destroy the thing everyone's been fighting for just felt so anticlimactic. At least Monty, once again, gets another great moment before boarding a getaway ship, as he helps bring a wounded Murphy to safety at the last second. A great callback to how Murphy helped carry Monty at the season 4 finale. Upon escaping the destroyed shallow valley, everyone aboard the ship goes into cryosleep, since there are no inhabitable spots left on Earth. They need to wait hundreds of years until Earth becomes habitable once again. That is, until Clark and Bellamy mysteriously awaken before everyone else, and even more mysteriously, meet a stranger named Jordan. Monty and Harper secretly had decided not to go into cryosleep. They decided their life of solitude on the Elitist ship was better than whatever awaited them after everyone woke up. Jordan is Monty and Harper's child, named after Jasper Jordan. After realizing Earth wasn't inhabitable, they put Jordan into cryosleep too. In their old age, Harper had passed away, and Monty navigated the ship to a moon that everyone can call their new home. Clark and Bellamy stare in awe at this newfound planet, both hoping, like Monty, that the human race can do better on this new destination. The fandom adores this ending, and I can see why. It really is such a beautiful moment. After all the constant bloodshed, murdering, cannibalism, you have Monty and Harper who got to live out a full life, die of old age, and get their friends to safety. It really feels like the characters have a chance to start anew, despite all the hardships and death that have followed them. This entire scene gives us hope that maybe, just maybe, this is where our characters can finally be at peace. The ending is amazing, even if I don't think it fits with such a snooze fest of a season. This moment was so good that the show unfortunately never had a moment that topped this scene in the last two seasons. And I mean, how could it? All in all, yes, this season is still one of my least favorites. Season 5 was built on a boring conflict and has an abrupt ending, which then somehow follows with a wonderfully beautiful ending. And thankfully, I'm happy to say that things do in fact pick up for Season 6. Season 6 of the 100. After everyone has been in cryosleep for hundreds of years, the remainder of humanity has arrived on the moon's sanctum, which for our characters was found by the late Monty Green. The characters hope to find a new home on this planet, and they won't take it for granted this time. Little did they know, Sanctum is inhabited by other Elitist astronauts, more pre-war characters who weren't previously prisoners this time around. However, through incredible technology, these Elitist astronauts have survived across hundreds of years through not cryosleep, but through these mind drives, using new human bodies for their settlement as hosts to continue living for hundreds of years. These body-snatching astronauts are known as primes, and people within the Sanctum settlement worship them like gods. Our characters must once again figure out how they will deal with facing another brand new threat, as they too might become a victim of the primes and their body stealing. Just reading that general plot synopsis is kind of crazy to say out loud. But honestly, from what we've seen with Allie in Season 3, it's really not the most far-fetched thing the show has done. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening on the show in Season 6. By now, it's really into that sci-fi aspect quite a bit. I remember reading a comment a long time ago that really resonated with how I felt about where the show was at this point. It was something along the lines of, honestly, I love these characters so much that I really didn't care whatever ridiculous situation the show has written them into. And yeah, I feel that in Season 6. If Season 3 was the season that really strayed away from the show's initial premise of teens surviving on Earth, well, whatever the show is from Season 6 onward is just completely unrecognizable. But don't fret. As I said before, I actually really like this season. Despite all my endless complaining about the 5th season, this one actually was pretty good. I am all in favor of the crazy ride the characters are on. And I think this season just worked for what the show had transformed into. In the premiere episode, about just under 10 of our characters get right to it and fly over to Sanctum. Obviously, they're just filming in the same location that they've always been, which are in the forests of British Columbia. So to get around this, the show gives the planet this sort of orange tint to distinguish it from Earth. I like it. It's a pretty simple but correct approach to making it quite literally feel otherworldly. Shortly after they arrive on the planet, Shaw dies from running into an invisible electric force field. This is just a situation where the actors wanted off the show, so they wrote it out as quickly as possible. It didn't really matter that much to me, as the character didn't do much for me anyways, though I probably would think he was to have an insight on the primes, given that he was a pre-war character himself. Even in the episode of his death, he mentions that he met Becca in the pre-war. But none of that matters now. Unfortunately, they had to write his death anyway. Speaking of actors wanting off the show, Avi spends a lot of time this season trying to save Kate. Fortunately for the show, Henry Ian Cusick had earned a main role on the reboot series of MacGyver. And was to be written off as well, but it occurred much later in the season. After briefly waking up in the premiere, he would start uncontrollably jumping and bleeding, and being placed back into cryosleep for most of the season. It's a shame since Kane was always one of my favorite characters, so I feel like I would have rather he got killed in Season 5 than have this storyline with him drag out for 10 episodes, but I'll talk more about his death when we actually get there. A bunch of the characters, now and Shaw, arrive at this empty settlement. It's a very eerie and creepy setting, and no one knows why it's been abandoned. Eventually they realize why the area has been vacated, as there's currently a red sun eclipse that's been above them the whole time. This eclipse causes a psychotic toxin to be released into the air, making everyone want to kill each other. So what follows is one of my favorite episodes of the show, Red Sun Rising. The whole episode is just so much fun to watch. Our characters are fully aware that they're all going to try and kill each other at any moment, so seeing them try to figure out the most safe way of not killing each other was very entertaining. It's especially fun for the audience because we're trying to guess who is going to become the great killer next. They're changing each other's walls, and they're not trusting anything that anyone is saying because you know he's been corrupted by the toxin. You have this emotional moment where Clark is contacted via ship via radio, and her mother picks up. It's clearly the toxin that's talking to her, and it starts taunting her for all the terrible things that she's done. Clark is not looked upon favorably by her friend presently. She made a lot of decisions that screwed over a lot of people in Season 5, and she wants to do better this time around. Unfortunately, Clark, whilst listening to this imaginary voice, is about to cut open her throat, but Murphy has her at gunpoint and convinces her not to do it. Although Clark hasn't fully turned to the toxin, the real Clark also struggled with that moment, not knowing if she really wanted to end it all right then and there. The decisions she's made up to this point were really starting to play out the character. In the same episode, there is a new that made the Elite where the remainder of our characters are residing. This is great because the show is finally starting to have both A and B plots that were both very engaging, something that had been missing for quite some time. Leading us to then some great wakes of Gyoza to assist with these invaders. Like I said before, Gyoza only started to grow on me as a character from Season 6 onward. Yes, it's much easier to root for the character when they're actually alongside our mains, but she is so good at being a ruthless tactician that it feels good to just have her alongside her team. They defeat the invaders, and one of them turns out to be a prime, which we, the audience, don't actually know what that means yet. Back on Sanctum, as the Red Sun saga concludes, everyone manages to fall asleep after Bellamy almost murders Murphy. Our spaceship characters return with their one prime hostage, and then the humans that actually reside on the settlement finally show up, arriving at the chaotic situation one crew has found themselves in. A young girl steps forward, asking Clark and company if they were there to take them home. Well, I have to say, this show must be pretty good if I've been this thorough in describing 2 episodes of the season so far. And yes, the 100 is back. The characters being on the planet Sanctum sort of acts as a reset, a fish out of water angle they had in the first season, but now the characters they're more grown up and interesting versions of themselves, so it plays better. With the third episode, we finally meet a bunch of new characters, those being most of the primes and citizens of Sanctum. They all seem like fine folks for now, but in time we'll quickly find out how sinister they really are. J.R. Bourne is easily to stand out as Russell Lightbourne. What they do with it next season is a waste of his talent, but Russell for this season is definitely great to watch. The character has such an interesting moral compass that you almost want to root for him sometimes, until you remember that he murders innocents to let him the bodies. He's a great character and a great antagonist for this season. We also get introduced to the Children of Gabriel, a faction led by a mysterious figure known as the Old Man. The faction itself is just whatever. I'm more fascinated by the Old Man character, but we'll see him later on. Unfortunately, one of the weaker parts of the last 2 seasons is that the new factions don't really feel like powerful threats like the Grounders, Mountain Men, or Outfield. We already know characters like Octavia, Gyoza, Echo, and many others can dispose of them like nothing, so tension is kind of lost there. Now, Russell is fully willing to kick Clark and company out, as Jordan naively told the primes about all the characters' mass murders throughout the years. This is until Russell discovers Clark is a Nightblood himself. The 4th episode is where the real kicker of the season begins. Up to this point, I like how vague all the Sanctumites and primes have been with their language use. They talk about primes and what flows through them, and naming things, all these things that don't really mean anything to the characters or the audience, and it makes sense for them to talk that way, and not to include anyone in on what's going on there. Although all the citizens do act pretty cult-like, our characters just sort of go along with it since they seem like nice people for them. This colony with the primes is really the only place to live on the street. Sanctum throws this dance party where Jordan is getting it on with his new friend Delilah, and Clark is also getting it on with his daughter Sylvie. Everything seems like a good time, and so Clark is radicalized by said doctor and is prompted to take him to rescue. It was stated prior to the season that this would be the most challenging point in the show for Eliza Taylor as an actress, and we find out why in this 4th episode. Russell had been scheming to use Clark as a new host for the Clarks, having a mind ride conservative in the back of her head. This believes she is Clark Redford, but now her mind is now that of Josephine Lightbourne, Russell's daughter. Earlier in the season, we got a flashback to the previous Legis team who was on Sanctum with their initial expedition on the planet. Well, these are the exact same characters, just having lived hundreds of years with various different host bodies. Eliza Taylor had the job of playing an entirely different character for a good chunk of this season, and it's entertaining as hell to watch her play Josephine. In episode 5, we get to know Josephine, and Josephine is on the The first thing she does is kill her best friend. Since Josephine first died as a bratty teenager and ascended to royalty shortly after being revived, all she's ever known is to be a brat, so she acts like one all the time. Well, I don't think I can entirely believe that someone would continue to act like a teenage brat after hundreds of years. Josephine is just too much fun to watch on screen even while we carry about something like that. Russell tasks Josephine with having to pretend to be Clark around all of Clark's family and friends, so the prize can find out if there are any other nightclub most wanted to. It's fun seeing how relevant Josephine is in these situations. She goes in looking for info and is immediately treated as a guy who speaks to her incandescent. It's hilarious and fun to keep guessing what she's going to keep down at. Since our one-two characters quickly discover the whole scheme that happens at Sanctum, they try to figure out what to do. And now that they know Clark and Maddie are targets, without knowing Clark is already dishonest. Bellamy and Murphy are the only ones to play this pretty for a bit. Bellamy is in prison, but Murphy is offered the role of becoming a prize. He is actually interested in this. When Murphy died for the German son, it struck this fear of God in him, and now he'd rather become a prize instead of theoretically going to hell. I just love Murphy. Whether he's siding with our character and being a contrary, I love him just being him. Season 6 is also, fortunately, where we get the development of the worst plot in the entire show, Shade Hedda. As Maddie now has the flamethrower, Shade Hedda, aka the commander, is planning to take over her mind. The character is generic and boring, way too cartoonishly evil for Hedda, and I have no interest in him whatsoever. Halfway through Season 6, we get another awesome episode called Evermore, where the real Clark is revealed to be alive and well inside the mind drive of Wilson. This episode is good. Clark's mind space is a small compartment in the creation of the article. We get to see all these illustrations in the past 6 seasons with so many callbacks to them. We get to see the return of many previous characters like Clark's father Jake, Allie, and we also get the original Josephine, played by Sarah Thompson, who's keeping tabs on the original for Minecraft. Thompson does a great job with it, and I feel like both Eliza and Sarah playing Josephine feels coherent, like they're both like the same driving character. Side note, it was a very cool touch to have Clark's wardrobe change between all of her iconic outfits throughout the show. Before Clark is about to keep up in his mind space for good, we get the return of the goat himself, Barnes. This was such a pleasant surprise. I completely forgot this was something that happened, so when I saw him again, I was very excited, and it makes perfect sense that he would come back to be Clark's voice of reason. Although I must admit, the bit at the end where Clark plays the Christmas lights in her mind space to have Josephine tap her fingers, which then sends Bellamy a message through Morse code, it's ridiculous. I can't believe I actually said all that. That part was good. Happening in the background of the Prime storyline, Gilda and Octavia have been in this team up to take down the mysterious old man who was actually on the force field in the same way. They're chasing a child with Gabriel named Xavier, who's very smart and knows his way around the booth very well. Eventually, it's no secret that Xavier is in fact the old man, Gabriel himself. Gabriel is my favorite character in the final 2 seasons, and maybe one of my favorite characters of the show as a whole. Gabriel is equally fine with effective for the horrible body snatching practices, to be the cause that will take down the runners with him. He's just such a resourceful ally of the characters, and he's a total boss for all. He's also the former love interest of Josephine. At some point, Octavia, Dioza, and Gabriel come across the anomaly. It's this giant moving portal plane that's a mystery to Sanctum. Dioza and Octavia are called towards it, with both entering, with only Octavia re-emerging. This was supposed to have happened halfway through Season 6, and it's a good setup for what's to come in Season 7. Jumping back to the fourth story, Maddie goes assassin mode, and she kills one of the Prime, makes a move to assassinate another one. Unfortunately, all this is dumb bullshit because it's not the Maddie character making these rash decisions, it's evil Shade Hedda is brainwashing her to do all the bad stuff. Again, I hate the character's entire existence, and it's once again another showing of Maddie as a plot device, who just exists to be corrupted by some other mediocre villain. Later, Maddie makes one of the most damning decisions yet, to take the life of an innocent Sanctumite to revive her. The deal was that she showed the Primes how making Cyclops work, and exchange paid to be resurrected. Again, it's a shame that Kane's final episode involved other actors running the character for most of it. I guess they really had no time to shoot other interviews scenes. The actor who plays second Kane did a fine job, but it's good that by the end we get to see Henry use to surprise the world and say goodbye to Henry. Also, we get Kane's goodbye out of the way. Octavia also got to get a bit of a flashback to the hallucination episode, as Gabriel tried to discover what she had seen after emerging from the field. Octavia basically hallucinates with battle of herself versus her Red Queen persona, Blood Raven. It's great to see Michael Beach return as Pike in this dream sequence. Whilst I've expressed my frustration with the Pike storyline in Season 3, I always liked the actor, and he's very much a pretty distinct one. and then finally seeing Octavia transform herself and the blood rate on the question. Here's the end of the season. Hook is finally resurrected by helping Bellamy and Gabriel, where she wipes out Josephine from her mind once and for all, killing Josephine from the princess. Now that Buck is back, we get this awesome setup where it's now Buck who has to pretend to be Josephine in secret to make her way back to Sanctum and infiltrate the Flutters. It's fun. The season really made the show fun. I don't have fun with the laugh at the reason why the whole dog on the show. As Buck is forced to see her mother transform into a farmer and having to kill said child. It just falls so perfectly messed up and dark the show. Trying to reach her mother once, and then the way he wants to kill her with a second. It must be indescribable. Season 6 ends with all the fire instead, save the monster, and give it this. We also get Shade Head after the match overall, although the code is still lingering out there because why not? Octavia is revealed to have this strange tattoo markings that resemble the symbols of the anomaly stone that reside in the figures. Begin learning one of the more confusing cliffhangers of the show. Gabriel's anomaly stone activates by using Octavia's markings, and then appears the character Hope, who is Dio's daughter. Without explanation, Hope stabs Octavia, who is sucked away by the anomaly portal, leaving Bellamy in shambles. In conclusion, I had a problem with this. It's definitely different, and didn't have the ability to make decisions in what Henry was called for, but obviously you can't just do the exact same thing every season. And I think this switched up on the Blue Planet, coupled with the crimes and their scheming, it was just great to see the differences into the new world of the 100. You know, Shade had a step aside, and it really felt like the show was back. It's too bad next season will be the final. Sadly, the end of a third of for the show. Cue season 7. Throughout this video, I am not happy with season 7. There are highlights in the season of that. The final season, to stick the landing, season 7 just didn't do it. There were a lot of factors going on behind the scenes that really affected the outcome of the season. Unfortunately, things had taken a turn for the worse for something past. Before season 7 had started, Eliza Taylor and Bob Morley publicly announced that they were in a relationship with one another, and before shooting, they had suffered a personal tragedy. As a result, rewrites were arranged for the characters Clark and Bellamy, both having the least amount of screen time that either character has ever had in previous seasons. Bob Morley was a prominent character for just about 3 episodes of season 7. You also had one of the cast members speak out about their experience on the show, and not in such a positive light. I'm talking about Jared Joseph, who was Nathan Miller, a character who's been around for 7 seasons, and he's hardly even a character. Seriously, there's nothing I can tell you about the guy at all, other than that his character is gay, and that he's really loyal to Octavia in season 5. The actor himself also seems to agree with this notion. On a podcast with a friend of his, also keeping in mind this podcast was released while the final season was still airing, Jared Joseph stated this.
I've already mentioned that my character doesn't bring too much on here. And I was there on that show from a part. I had my role, I had my guy, and I was the guy. Then I started to get maybe a little cynical, if not cynical and complacent about, oh, it doesn't really matter. Everything's been rectified. I've done this for a long time. I guess I just do this. Not ruffle feathers, just open the guy, make a facial expression. I honestly became confused about the real position of everybody's. And I searched for answers, I tried to talk, but when it seemed like no one was interested in me improving this character or improving my work, I honestly, to be honest, I never knew what I was there half the time injured. And it didn't seem like anyone was in a rush to tell me or to help me figure it out.
It's very complex to consider that after having spent 7 years on a show, you didn't have the character that you played for that long to see nothing more. No satisfying development for her. You're just sort of vague. Look, I know I have yet to talk about this season, but I'm bringing up all these events to paint a picture for you all, just how things were behind the scenes during the making of season 7. If Jared Joseph's comments were an implication of anything, it might just be a telling sign that many of the cast and crew's parts weren't in it. A lot of things had to be rewritten as they were shooting to make up for Bellamy's absence. So when you have the spontaneous storytelling, coupled with the actors just being over the whole thing, I get why the season turned out the way it did. But without further ado, let's talk about season 7. Season 7 picks up exactly where we left off at the end of season 6. Sanctum is in a bit of disarray now. Crimes were exposed as crimes. After Octavia is kidnapped, Bellamy is also kidnapped, and we now have the emergence of a brand new faction known as the Disciples. They are another human faction, completely separate planet, the Earth world, of the temporal. Their primary goal is to transcend the human race, but what does that exactly entail? Let's watch to find out. It was announced in advance that this was, in fact, the final season of the show, which in my mind was strange. Not that I want the show to carry on. It was my favorite show, ended around the 5-season mark roughly. It's just with the whole looking one thing at the end of season 5, you would think there would be more storylines planned for the show. Now, regarding the beginning, I actually think the season starts out kind of all right. I know after all that said, I'm looking the opposite. Here, the initial season setup appears to be that our lead characters can figure out how to manage Sanctum. One through after Sanctum, in the span of weeks, fucked up their entire way of fight that's been for hundreds of years. I like that they somewhat hold themselves accountable for this stuff, but there's lots of innocent people that live in Sanctum that keep died and seem now more than ever. The children of Gabriel are also now in Sanctum. Want to see Russell dead more than anything. Defending Russell is really public justice. We're the pride of this boy and children's. Also, the elusive prisoners and all of one of the predators are finally on the same page. There's a lot of factions to juggle, no persuade after the collaboration with each other. A lot of these conflicts are tied to the fact that Russell is still alive. At first, I really loved that idea, but I thought Russell was an MVP character last season. I wanted to believe that there'd be a meaningful arc with Clark, where she would constantly struggle with choosing to kill or spare Russell once and for all, the man who murdered her mother after all. Unfortunately, this is all resolved within a single episode. Russell's mind drive is taken over by none other than the worst character of the entire show, Shade Meadow. Now, I'd be lying if I were not to mention that J.R. Bourne elevates this character by 200%. I think the writers realized how bad Shade Meadow was in Season 6, so having J.R. Bourne take on the role was much more entertaining for audiences. It's just, what we could have done with actual Russell, I felt would have been so much better. And J.R. Bourne was far more better as the Russell character. But I guess he's stuck as Shade Meadow. Thankfully, things pick up from here with the second episode titled The Dark. You finally find out what happened to Octavia and Gibson when they entered the Anomaly back in Season 6, as well as learning more about who Hope is. The episode takes place on a planet called Skyring, or Penance, or Planet Beta, you've got a lot of names. It's a recurrent trend this season that will just sort of start having new planets thrown at us left and right. Now yes, it's pretty coincidental that Octavia went through the anomaly just as Dioza was giving birth, but I can forgive that, as there's something about this slow burn episode that you don't really get from the show very often. Shelby Flannery as Hope was also added as series regular for this final season. I like the character, and I think she was a wonderful addition to the show, even if I don't think the character will have a very satisfying conclusive arc in the end. We needed an episode to see her upbringing, given how little time we had to wrap up the show. This episode did it wonderful. One thing this season does benefit from is having the supporting main cast get the forefront for certain episodes. So it's cool to see characters like Echo, Hope, and Gabriel take center stage. Even though last Gabriel was also added to the main cast. I've said it before, Gabriel is such a thing. I wish we could have had another season of him. He was just awesome. Unfortunately, episode 3, False God, is a bit of a letdown. The main point of this episode is that the reactor on Sanctum will melt down unless our characters act quickly. It's just a pointless filler episode. We know that the reactor will not melt down. And they also finally decided to have Raven make a tough moral decision after 7 seasons. We needed 7 seasons to finally have Raven make a choice where she is directly responsible for some deaths. I feel like this should have happened way earlier in the show, when every other main character was dealing with this exact same experience. By episode 4, we have a team comprised of Clark, Raven, Jordan, and Isla, who all meet the disciples and then leave Sanctum in search of their missing friends. The thing is, these characters leaving creates an issue for the whole achieve peace in Sanctum plotline that's taking shape. You would think that they would have at least left Jordan in Sanctum. There was actually a setup for the character at the end of Season 6 to be aligned with the Adjusters, and we get a bit of that at the start of Season 7. But no, it goes off with Clark and company. I like the Jordan character, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that his arc sort of feels correct in this matters. Anyways, the issue that I'm referring to regarding the Sanctum plotline is that we are left with characters like Murphy, Warren, Jackson, and Matt. All of whom, unfortunately, I don't think are strong enough characters to carry this Sanctum plotline. Yes, I love Murphy, and I think he's really both cool characters, but with everything they just completed with the Disciples, coupled with the fact that the second most important character on the show is missing, it just feels like such a useful plot at this point. You cannot convince me that any of the audience actually cares about what's going on with the Children of Gabriel or the Adjusters. Their plotline came and went, and now those factions are just kind of here. Russell is dead, unbeknownst to them. There are no more crimes in Sanctum. It just feels like a waste of time seeing these factions bigger over characters that don't even exist anymore. Jumping ahead to the end of episode 5, we actually see Bob Marley and Peter at Bell again, which is pretty crazy. All the fans knew beforehand that Bob was taking a step back in his screen time this season, so we really didn't know when the next time we'd see the Belgian character. It felt good to finally have him back, as a solid good name for the 5th episode. But then they just make him disappear again, or you have this disciple grenade that knocks him into the anomaly, but everyone thinks he died. It's just so frustrating. But, of course, the circumstances surrounding this probably forced the writers to create scenarios where he was able to fulfill appearing in a certain amount of episodes, even if it was for just less than a few minutes. In episode 6, we're on an ice planet. It's, whatever. I mean, we don't see much of the planet because they go inside a cave for budget reasons. The following episode, we get a lot of pertinent information regarding what the series finale will ultimately come to. We'll learn about the concept of transcendence, which... do not even get me started on that. We also get a cliffhanger that introduces Bill Cadigan, who I think is a solid final antagonist and definitely should have held more of the limelight than Shade Hedda. Following in episode 8, we get Cadigan's proper introduction, but in a different way. This episode is actually a backdoor pilot to the 100 prequel series that was in development at the time. Initially, they had planned a potential prequel show based on the beginning years of the apocalypse. Well, as most of you probably know, the prequel never ended up happening. I, for one, am fine with that. Even being the grounder, lore connoisseur that I am, I didn't really find myself particularly interested in these characters we're introduced to in this flashback episode. Though I don't mind the episode itself, as we get some cool lore drops like seeing the first survivors who stayed in the Second Dawn bunker, the explanation as to how Cadigan got to planet Fargo, and the fact that there was an anomaly stone inside the vault the entire time. It's not something that I mind at all. If one crew even managed to locate the anomaly stone, it wouldn't have mattered because they wouldn't even know what the hell to do with it. Jump to episode 9. We finally get the answers to what the disciples believe they are up against. Octavia, Echo, and the Diosas get to see the actual planet surface of Bardo, above the disciples' base. Bardo is this stormy, crystallized world. According to the disciples, the Bardoans were punished for losing, quote-unquote, the last war. To the disciples, the last war is a prophecy that they believe humanity will eventually have some sort of final battle to determine the fate of the entire race. But if a race or species were to win their own last war, then they would transcend. To be honest, this has to be the most batshit crazy thing that the show has introduced up to this point. And I don't even remember being that shocked when it happened. I sort of just stopped caring about how ridiculous it was, but more curious as to what the last war was supposed to look like. But that doesn't matter. Since the fact that Jordan, within the span of a couple of hours, was able to figure out that the disciples are completely wrong about the last war, that it's most likely a test. Like, come on, guys. It just feels like nobody cared what the rating is. I get that the disciples are a cult and would believe anything that they're told, but Cadigan said that these messages were being studied for hundreds of years. The disciples improperly deciphering the text is totally believable. I get that. But you're telling me that Jordan figured it out in less than a few hours? I mean, like, give me a break. Eventually, Shade had to have to drop the guys from all the sacrifice and just revealed that Russell was in fact dead. Seeing Shade dressing up in grounder outfits is pretty goofy, just given how J.R. Bourne was playing the Russell character previously. It just makes me take the character less seriously, if I'm being honest. Although on one positive note, Shade wipes out both the Adjusters and Children of Gabriel, two of the most useless factions in Sanctum, so hooray! We also get to see Indra eventually throw down with Shade. The fight is cool, I'll give him that. I was definitely in. Although unfortunately it has the dumbest ending ever, with Maddie showing up and cutting one of Shadehead's eyes, and then Maddie just disappears into the crowd. Regardless of any of that, Shadehead has finally conquered Sanctum. Hope and Echo try to crystallize the entire Disciples' base, using the substance that killed the original Bardoans. In Hope's final attempt to take down the Disciples with the substance, Mother Diosa gets in the way and dies in the process. It sucked to see Diosa go. Again, she was a cool character, and I think her dying was handled just right. Although Mother Diosa's words to Hope begging her not to end up like her and to be better don't really amount to much, given how the series ends with about like a dozen people alive, so there's not really that many people for Hope to do better around. And it's finally by episode 11 that we get the episode to explain exactly what happened to Bellamy Clay. Bob Morley has finally returned. And honestly, this episode is pretty good on its own. What breaks it down is unfortunately what happened to the Bellamy character after this episode, but as an episode for the grand return of a beloved character who will stick around until the end of the show, it's pretty good. Bellamy and the disciple named Doucette are stuck on a new planet that has the two of them are a solid duo this episode. Watching Bellamy nurse Doucette back to health, and then slowly building up a bond between the two was great to watch. The two are forced to ascend a mountain to reach the anomaly portal that will return them back to Bardo. During their journey, they find a cave of those who have transcended, presumably the race of aliens that resided on Etheria. Now, on first viewing, I was ready to call BS on anything with Last Wars or Transcendence, because it just felt like such a jump-the-shark kind of thing, and obviously it still does. I just felt like there had to be something more to this Transcendence thing. It couldn't be that there was some higher being judging everyone. That's just some baloney that the disciples believe. Yikes. Anyways, Bellamy for a moment gives into Doucette's belief system and begins praying to the Shepherd, which that title refers to Cadigan himself. Through his prayer, Bellamy sees his mother in physical form. On a rewatch, it makes me wonder if Bellamy's mom is just a projection of his version of the judge. He was more than likely hallucinating from being in the cave for several months. But I honestly don't know. Given how the show ended with Space God, I really can't tell what is real on this show anymore. As Bellamy has slowly but surely pointed out his disciple cultivates ideals, he's forced to take a physical and metaphorical leap of faith off the mountain and into the announcement portal. He does so, rides on Fargo safely, but unfortunately, he comes out of that portal no longer Bellamy but the characters and the audience knew. The following episode, The Stranger, is of course a reference to what Bellamy has become. The episode is Bellamy going from room to room where his friends are kept prisoner, where he wholeheartedly explains why he betrayed them. We still love him, wants to transcend and all that, but he's just a completely different person, and it's way too dark. Even if I enjoyed the previous bottle episode, you can't have him fully brainwashed within a single episode. It just doesn't work like that. All they've done is undo years of character development. This new person he's turned into is so frustrating to watch. And then he just allows Clark to be tortured by the disciples. Like, what is going on? I have to say that the ending of this episode, where Clark and company teleport to Sanctum, seeing formerly Russell dressed up as Hedda on the Skull Throne, is just, it's priceless, and it's a great cliffhanger. And so, finally reached the contender for the most controversial episode of the 100, Season 7, Episode 13, titled Clark Died. Most of this episode is actually good. It's really only the conclusion that drops the ball tremendously. The episode also gives Gabriel a final solid episode for himself before his end in the following 14th episode. Watching him hallucinate Josephine, and then him to be the one to destroy the flame, is such an awesome moment for the character. Gabriel was the first character that got Cadigan to finally drop his cocky demeanor for once, and I'll always respect him for pulling that off. But then, the infamous conclusion to this episode happens. Clark takes Cadigan hostage, and all of her friends go through an anomaly portal, but Clark forces Bellamy to stay back. That is until Hedda tells Bellamy that he can assist them with identifying Maddie's drawings within her notebook. Clark tells Bellamy to relinquish the notebook, but Bellamy refuses, wishing to give it to Cadigan. Reluctantly and tearfully, Clark shoots Bellamy in the chest. Oh, I know. Where do I even begin? I was in complete disbelief myself. It was done, but I actually had to theorize how Bellamy could be alive, because I couldn't fathom how the writing actually got this point. I was convinced that it had to be a fake out, but I was so naive. Jason Rothenberg released a statement immediately confirming Bellamy's death. It didn't help. Fans were furious. Twitter wasn't ladies. Again. Reactors had just given up on the show when there was only a few episodes of the entire series remaining. There's so many things that you can set down with this. The fact that all of this is because Bellamy had joined the cult, not because it made sense for the character, but because the writing made him stupid, or the fact that Clark was so hell-bent on getting a notebook from Bellamy that she didn't even get said notebook back, or the fact that all of this hinges on the fact that Clark made this choice in order to protect her plot device daughter, instead of her best friend Bellamy, who she has known since the very beginning of the series. Yes, we know Bob Morley needed his mental health break. That should always come first and foremost for any human. When the shoot dates for the final season were set, the production likely couldn't reschedule an entire season to accommodate one actor. The show had to go on, they had to do rewrites, and unfortunately the writing for the Bellamy character suffered because of it. But, dare I say, could there be more to this? As I stated previously, an actor like Ricky Whittle was more than going to be open about how he was allegedly treated negatively on the show. But I have yet to mention that Bob himself stated at the end of Season 6 his own dissatisfaction with the show. Have you guys ever heard of Bellart? Well, I actually went the entire video without mentioning that, didn't I? Well, now is as good time as ever. If you were living under a rock, shipping characters on the 100 was an immensely popular thing. And Bellart is shipped to Clark Griffin and Bellamy Blake. It has to be the biggest ship the show has ever seen. Yes, you Lexa fans have a concede on that one. Not a fair comparison. Bellamy is the fierce hardboiled Mexico in the show. Anyways, Bob tweeted at the end of Season 6 about how he was surprised that he apparently misinterpreted the entire Bellamy Blake character, since Bellamy almost lost his mind trying to resuscitate Clark at the end of Season 6. This was in response to the fact that Jason Rothenberg did an interview claiming that fans misinterpreted Bellamy's desperation for Clark in that moment, and that it wasn't a feeling of anything romantic. I would say Bob Morley's final statement about the show says it all. Thank you for sitting through all the heartache and triumph, baiting and bruises. Jason Rothenberg had baited everyone again, this time over the course of a 7-year run. It was constantly and consistently baited to the audience that the relationship would blossom between Clark and Bellamy's characters, and I have to complain about this. Not because I care about shipping, but because unfortunately for Jason Rothenberg, this wasn't just the fans misinterpreting that the two characters had excellent chemistry. You literally wrote it into the fucking show. Here's Clark giving Bellamy a kiss on the cheek in Season 2, Episode 16. Here's Season 5, Episode 5, where Clark is seemingly taken aback by Bellamy after embracing his blood brother. Here's Season 6, Episode 1, where Clark tells Bellamy that radioing to him when she couldn't get a response was the only thing that kept her sane. Here's Bellamy performing CPR on Clark in Season 6, Episode 10, saying that he needs her. Far more than just misinterpreting Jason, it's literally what you wrote for him and Eliza to act out. Jason Rothenberg stated that when Season 7 began, they had written Bellamy to live to the end, to forego the whole transcendence thing along with all the other characters. Except I don't believe that. Given the precedent with Ricky Riddle, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a feud started that led to Jason wanting to kill off the character. That's how insane Bellamy's death is to me, how badly it was fumbled. That this death had to be the product of some petty drama. I can't see any other reason why an important character like Bellamy would be treated so poorly. Anyways, there's still a few episodes left to go on the show. Our characters return to Earth with Cadigan, in which Earth has finally regrown after hundreds of years. Cadigan pulls out a pill and teleports out there, or some shit. I don't know, who fucking cares? Clark is forced to tell everyone about Bellamy's death. It's honestly very emotional. I think the scene could have done without Echo's monologue about,
Can you build this chaos to make sense? All the violence, all the people we killed.
it was one of those too on the nose moments in the dialogue that the show does sometimes. And the fact that we're supposed to believe that everyone there would be totally okay with what Clark did is pretty ridiculous. But seeing how emotional everyone else got, it really tugged on my heartstrings. The Bellamy we saw die last episode was the house. Because who we saw die is not the character we for 7 years. But when we see the remainder of the characters react to the news, that's when the is really shocked on us. Sure, gone from Bellamy's death after this opening scene. The show had way too much to wrap up, so they had to just keep going as quickly as possible. Obviously, characters keep bringing him up throughout the final 3 episodes, but it's not something they really have time to think of. Octavia has trauma from it, which is understandable, and I'm glad they included it for this episode. Indra owning responsibility for her opponent when he was fighting Vince was a great moment as well. I never spoke much about them, but the Octavia and Indra pairing is definitely one of the better duos in the entire show. This episode, Shade teams up with Cadigan and is sent to retrieve Maddie. While Shade is invisible, he gets way too cartoonishly close in front of people's faces. It's goofy, and they should not have decided to have the character do that. It makes him and the rest of them look stupid. Shade kills Gabriel in the process. I have to say that he did need to die in the real game. Gabriel had cheated death too many times. It was time for him to truly pass on. He probably was originally meant to die last episode, but was moved to this one due to constant regrets this season, and did not have Gabriel's death overshadow my felonies. Jump to the second last episode, Maddie has given herself up to the disciples because, plot device. Cadigan ends up scanning Maddie's brain for way too long, so she suffers a stroke and renders her entire body paralyzed. The boat, of course, is traumatized and is about to first kill Maddie, when he learns that Cadigan now has the code to activate the anomaly cell and begin the test. Unfortunately, this episode also begins the plotline of characters trying to save 5olrYt8TTk'wtkK after she's impaled. This was a waste of time, and not a plotline that needed to see for the final 2 episodes of the show. The writers knew it was a waste, and they threw it in there anyways. And so the stage was set for the last episode of the entire show. I have to be honest, I didn't believe they could wrap up everything in a satisfying way within 42 minutes. But Jason Rothenberg announced the show would get an extra minute of screen time for the finale. And that was it. That was the moment we were thrown. No time to cover everything. This episode was just good. After inputting the code from Cadigan teleports to the other world of the dimension, it gives some of the other guys. Cadigan sees his daughter, Kaylee, who appeared in the battle. But it's not actually Kaylee, rather it is the judge, a space god who had taken the form of his daughter. The judge is the one who is the evaluator of the test, the one who decides if one's race of beings crystallized or transcend. Yes, we are actually ending the series with the space god that the judge speaks in this game. Okay. I don't think any of that really warrants a rant. The sentence I just uttered basically speaks for itself. But Jordan was correct. It truly was a test, and Cadigan is ready to answer the judge's questions. If he fails, humanity goes crystallized. If he succeeds, they achieve transcendence. But before he can even get a word in, he is shot dead by 12. I actually like this. Though I would have been interested to hear Cadigan's defense of humanity, I love the swiftness of his demise. A man who played God for centuries was killed so easily, and he was just like any other human, fragile and mortal. After Clark killed Cadigan, she sort of inherited being the test taker, and the judge had taken the form of, you guessed it, a fan-favorite character, Lux. They were going to do one fan service thing for the finale, and I guess this was the most obvious choice. The judge tells Clark that she has demonstrated why humanity should not be safe, and you know what? Clark tells her, hey, this is bullshit. Your whole space god thing of judging species is dumb and hypocritical. You just genocide races you don't like. And you're like, holy shit, is Clark ever correct? The whole thing is just dumb and hypocritical. A judge who decides the fate of millions of billions of others based on their opinion of one individual? Regardless, the judge sends Clark away. She has failed the test for humanity. Raven then decides to take the test herself. She sees Abby take the form of her judge, which is a choice that definitely lands on Raven. They witness the final battle take place between one group and the disciples. This is probably the most awkward part of the whole show, and I'll look down first. It's just weird seeing them standing in these perpendicular lines facing each other. It looks way too perpendicular than this. Good God, then you have Reddit, Octavia, and Echo running into a line of fire between both factions and somehow barely surviving. And then that battle becomes stuff. That's the best thing ever could have possibly happened. Indra takes a Christmas Catholic weapon and blows up Shade Hedda. He's finally gone, guys. You know, given how easy and inconsequential it was to have the Adjusters and Children of Gabriel killed, you probably could have just killed Shade Hedda the moment you discovered him, like halfway through the season. Ah well. Anyways, Shade Hedda dying was enough to get everyone on both sides to stop shooting, I guess. Octavia gives a big speech to both factions, and the judge gets to see humanity can change. So the judge decides that humanity can in fact transcend. The thing is, Raven didn't actually do anything here. Yes, she stalled the judge a bit longer and got her to see that humanity could do better, but she sure as hell did not plan out any of the aforementioned events to transpire. And there's no good way to write a peaceful solution to any of this. The disciples were trained since birth to be killing machines, waiting for the day of the last rule. And Octavia just changes their minds because she yelled really loud at them. There's no way Raven knew the battle would just abruptly stop like that. It was just pure luck and bad writing. Everyone but Clark begins to transcend, as she failed the test previously. Clark then returns to Earth and sees the judge one last time, just because he gotta show the fans Lexa one more time. The judge basically rubs it into Clark that she can't transcend with everyone else, but those who loved and cared about Clark have returned to live out their final days with her. All the remaining main characters join Clark as the final members of the human race, and then the show concludes. I'll just get out of the way. I don't think a lot of these characters would or should have stayed back for Clark. Characters like Miller, Jackson, Indra, Gaia. Heck, I feel like Nyla would have also wanted to stay back in Transcendence. Also, Levitt. Really? Now, in spite of the subpar rating that got us to this point, the conclusion, I did find it hard. Even though I think the circumstances that we've arrived at are very stupid, I was also the one who agreed with the notion that we just watch this show because we love these characters, and we love to see whatever crazy scenarios they end up in. And you know what? I'm really touched by the fact that Clark needs people that would give up Transcendence so that she wouldn't be lonely for the rest of her life. But unfortunately, this judge, space god thing ending was a detriment for the show. I think the show asked way too many important questions about how the world would be after the conflict with the disciples wrapped. As I said before, Diosa asked that her daughter Hope would do better and be better than her. What would that have looked like for the Hope character? It feels like there wasn't really a proper conclusion for that arc or setup. A couple episodes prior, Gaia also asks an important question: what are you supposed to do when a fanatical leader dies, as they will just be replaced? That question also isn't answered, because humanity just transcends right after Cadigan died. And the fact that they transcend was stupid, because that assumes the judge just knows that these humans would never ever fight again. Like, how do you know that for sure? If the judge is really that omnipotent, then I guess I'm just stupid, because we know damn well that there wouldn't be peace forever. All of these questions go out the window, because the space god solved everything. It's just so disappointing. One of the main questions asked throughout the show is it worth surviving if you must do all these horrible things to survive? The characters used to make morally questionable decisions to save those that they loved. And if the answer to everything is just keep making tough decisions until you transcend with space gods, it's just... it feels like there was never a point to any of this. This show, I obviously had a very strong love-hate relationship with, and despite how much negativity I threw out in this video, I still look fondly back on the 100. It really should have just been some cringy teen drama that I would have dropped after 2 episodes, but it really did have something special going for it. I think the show just had this underdog quality to it that made me root for it to keep coming back and doing better each and every time. The way that it expanded from the initial premise of 100 dumb teenagers surviving on post
Hi, I'm Greg. May I take your order? Uncle. Lieutenant Wilhelm. Have you as his father? Remember the rapid fire. Could save your life out there. We'll meet again. After I have the attitude.
Forget about engaging them at sea, even with all of your vendors on all of your boats. Their numbers are just too great.
Make our stand here. How far away are they?
They'll probably be in range in an hour, with 2 tops.
We need to call the patrol zone. Shore up the defensive lines. Thank you.
This is bad, isn't it?
They mean business, but so do we. I'd say it's 50-50. 60-40. Where are you going?
To even the odds.
Forgive me, Admiral, but I'm confused.
You're wondering why the command ship isn't leading the attack.
It does seem an unusual strategy.
Were you the one who pointed out a frontal assault on the waterbenders would be fruitless?
Well, yes, but
So it made sense to attack on multiple fronts.
opening in front with one ship.
One ship, and not one vessel.
Iron Nation engineers created this.
Oh, this isn't our... No, this comes courtesy of our spies in Omar. This is just a prototype.
Even if you use it to bypass ghk's main defenses, it's far too small to carry any kind of significant fighting force.
You of all people should know that victory doesn't always depend on the numbers. But it should get the job done.
Job? What job? I really liked you.
Now's not the time to tell us.
Now is exactly the time.
I don't admit myself to women are not allowed to talk.
That's my job, you know how stupid that is. Forget your pride. This is about the survival of the waterbenders, and you need all the help you can get. You know we can make a difference.
Wait.
All they want is what you want. A chance to defend their homes.
Pockets. What good is it relying on the past when it stops us from having a future? Get over yourself, you old fool, and let us get the job done.
Western side of the wall needs reinforcement. We can help them repair the damage. See if the warriors need any other assistance. First, will be right soon. If the firebender breaks the wall, you'll be the first line of defense. We'll be ready. You win.
I'm not going to hide while everyone is risking their lives.
Listen to me.
No, you have to stop being overprotective.
Look. Anything should happen to me. must take over. You are the future of the Northern Water Tribe. My daughter. My gift. Fuck! I need you to go with UuYi and help remove the people away from the wall. But most importantly, make sure the princess stays safe.
I swear I won't leave her side.
Sorry.
Take care of her.
Master Pop told us to report to you.
Parker sent you to me?
He told us to help you in any way we can. We haven't finished our training yet, but we'll try our best.
You can start by reinforcing that section. If you spot any incoming fireballs, don't try to take them on yourself. Let me know.
Yes, Master Katara.
What? I'm not...
And water vendors draw their strength on the moon. And on the night like tonight, their powers will be at their peak. I suggest you pause the attack until daybreak.
No. I have been studying up on matters beyond this realm, which is why I know that is interesting. It's the nice little rare cosmic event of
Security Chief Blanchard. No copy.
physical and
Barricade at the
spiritual.
command center. Not a little dinged up. I'll
On
live.
this night.
See if there's anyone left to save. Body cam
When
live.
I
I'll
received
keep
the
eyes
Fire
on
Lord's orders to conquer the North, I knew brute force was
You just made a fatal mistake.
nothing. Just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but my cosmic down, pushing forward, and looking
Agna Kelvin is still on the sites of the ancestral home of the Water Tribe.
Blanchard out.
Races
3 janocide staffers are
to
missing
provide
somewhere in
warmth
your hail.
and nourishment for their people. Harsh
Locate and
environment.
extract.
It
Counting on
was
their
a
expertise
discovery.
to end this outbreak.
Tribe looked up to the sky. I want you to push them forward to the top. Their lives come from the spirit of the future, while their powers come from the spirits of the moon. These same spirits give up their immortality one time every year among the mortals. If it is performed, become parts of the mortal world.
they appear in this world.
In order to better understand the balance between light and darkness, yin and yang, life and death.
Yeah. You're not thinking of tackling with a spirit folk, are you?
You know, the people who
Are
live
you?
here trusted us. We failed them. And I can't even explain how.
Hey.
Parker?
I've come to I can sense it. One creating materials from the spirit world. And if it has returned to the North, it can only mean one thing. You're going to kill the ocean and moon spirits? Of course not. Killing the ocean spirit would deprive waterbenders around the world of their lives. Men, women, children. I'm not a monster. No. I'm only going to kill the moon. Zhao cannot be allowed to meddle with the finer forces. So he will put the entire world out of balance. The Avatar's power is the spirit. I inherit the power of the spirits.
Double points. You need to find something.
Thank you. No, but what actually made yourself useful? Momo? Goodbye.
I can help him. We don't have much time.
The waters that made this grow overheated by the earth. Here, give him to me. This is where the priest brought me when I was sick. To the source of all spiritual energy in the land.
Momo! Don't tell me that scare me like that. Thank you.
with what Grant is doing. There is a legitimate reason why Jason is the way he is. His story would not work with a character experienced in warfare. Jason is imperfect because he has no prior experience, and there is a term called tabula rasa, which means the idea of individuals being born empty of any built-in mental content. And that is precisely what Jason is. Jason can become so powerful throughout the game because he knows nothing about killing from the start, and he was willing to let go of his previous life to become something else, something far more dangerous. People like Grant already know how to kill, hence he cannot transform like Jason. Just compare the scenes between Grant's first kill in the game and Jason's.
Hey, fuck up!
My fuck, he's dead. Grant can completely kill without remorse, unlike Jason, who is having a panic attack. And this becomes even more apparent when we talk about Jason's voice. The developers even made sure of this when choosing the voice actor. If we compare the E3 reveal trailer and listen to how Jason sounded then...
Across this island, Last and his pirates enslaved the bodies and the minds of the Rakyat. Our guns do not stop until Voss falls at our feet.
Across this island, Voss and his pirates enslaved